Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Bulletin and these are the headlines. In Afghanistan, 3 female media workers have been shot dead by gunmen in 2 separate attacks in the eastern city of Jalalabad. The Taliban have denied involvement in the attacks. The latest violence follows a pattern of attacks targeting Afghan security officials, journalists and judges. ASEAN foreign ministers have pressed Myanmar's military to release ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi and restore democracy. They were speaking at a video conference on the crisis in Myanmar as police opened fire to disperse crowds in Yangon and Calais. At least 21 people have been killed since the February 1 coup. The US has announced sanctions on 7 Russian officials over the poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny last year. The decision was made after US intelligence concluded that the Russian government was behind the nerve agent attack. The Russian government has denied involvement in the attack. The French government says older people can now get the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine. Last month, the country approved the use of the vaccine for under 65s only, citing a lack of data for older people. The virus has so far infected more than 114 million people worldwide. Over 2.5 million, including 12,938 in Pakistan, have died. And in the Pakistan Super League, Islamabad United are chasing a target of 157 runs set by Quetta Gladiators at the National Stadium in Karachi. Sarfraz Ahmed scored 54 runs for Gladiators. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In Afghanistan, 3 female media workers have been shot dead by gunmen in 2 separate attacks in the eastern city of Jalalabad. Local officials say all 3 victims were associated with a local channel in Akas TV. The same media network lost its prominent journalist Malale Maiwand in a similar attack in December last year. The Taliban have denied involvement in the attacks. The latest violence follows a pattern of attacks targeting security officials, journalists and judges. ISIS claimed the responsibility for some of those attacks. Pakistan has once again called for a UN probe into human rights violations by Indian troops in occupied Kashmir. This comes in response to India's propaganda against Islamabad at the 46th session of the UN Human Rights Council. Pakistan's Second Secretary Junaid Suleiman said New Delhi's compulsive obsession with Islamabad is not new. He said the EU Disinfo Lab has already exposed India's disinformation campaign. He added that Narendra Modi's fascist regime is silencing dissent in the so-called Indian democracy. The government in India's northern Uttar Pradesh has imposed a partial curfew in the state capital to curb the farmers' agitation. BJP leader Yogi Adityanath says the curfew in the state will stay till April the 5th. In an act of solidarity with the farmers, dairy farmers of the state have stopped the supply of milk to the cooperative societies. Meanwhile, the Assembly in Punjab has paid tributes to the farmers who died during the ongoing protest against the 3 laws. A farmers' leader say they will block an important expressway near Delhi on March the 6th. Over 200 farmers have died during the ongoing agitation, including 5 who committed suicide in the demonstrations. ASEAN foreign ministers have pressed Myanmar's military to release ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi and restore democracy. The call comes as police opened fire to disperse crowds in Yangon and Calais. Speaking at a video conference on the crisis in Myanmar, the Indonesian foreign minister said the bloc won't interfere in Myanmar's affairs, but urged the country to open its doors to ASEAN to resolve escalating tensions. In his address, the foreign minister of Singapore said he is appalled by the crackdown that has left 21 protesters dead since the February 1 coup. However, some pro-democracy supporters said ASEAN's engagement with the military rulers would give them legitimacy. The US has defended its decision not to sanction Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. At a news conference, State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Washington seeks to recalibrate, not rupture ties with Riyadh. Price said the Biden administration is working to put the relationship with Riyadh on the right footing. He said the US is focused on the future conduct of Saudi Arabia. Price said future arms sales to Riyadh will also be evaluated based on the US interests and values. Meanwhile, the White House reiterated that Washington reserves the right to sanction the Crown Prince in the future if necessary.
Of course, we reserve the right to take any action at a time and manner of our choosing. I will note, Steve, that historically, the United States, through Democratic and Republican presidents, has not typically sanctioned government leaders of countries where we have diplomatic relations.
Saudi Arabia says at least 5 of its civilians have been injured after Houthis' military projectile fell in the Jazan region. The kingdom's civil defense said the projectile hit a street, injuring 3 Saudi and 2 Yemeni citizens. It said the projectile's debris damaged 2 houses, a grocery store and 3 vehicles. Meanwhile, the US says it is considering taking additional steps to promote accountability for Houthis. In a press briefing, the State Department's spokesperson said Houthis must cease their cross-border raids on Saudi Arabia. Ned Price said Houthis' conduct will have to change to make progress towards peace. Pakistan has condemned the Houthi attack on the kingdom. In a statement, the foreign ministry called for an immediate end to attacks that violate Saudi sovereignty and threaten civilians' lives. Yemen claims the UAE has deployed military commanders to the strategic Yemeni island of Socotra. Yemen's information minister's advisor said the move coincided with the docking of an Emirati ship at the archipelago. In a tweet, Mukhtar al-Rabi said the ship is carrying ammunition. Al-Rabi said the deployment follows a military escalation on the island. Last October, Abu Dhabi announced it had ended its military presence in the war-torn Yemen, but Yemeni officials insist that the UAE still has a military presence in Socotra, Balhaf and Mayun. In occupied Jerusalem, Israeli occupation forces have detained 4 people from the South African community and assaulted others near Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. In a statement, Palestinian Prisoners Society spokesman Nasser Kos said Israeli police also clashed with the civilians. Meanwhile, several Palestinian rights organizations held a rally outside the Israeli military camp and detention center west of Ramallah. They called for a boycott of the Israeli military courts, adding that they have become a tool in the hands of the occupation forces. The US has announced sanctions on 7 Russian officials over the poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny last year. The decision was made after US intelligence concluded that the Russian government was behind the nerve agent attack. Moscow denies involvement in the incident. After the poisoning, Navalny was airlifted to Germany, where he recovered. He returned to Russia in January and was arrested on arrival. A court last month found that Navalny violated the terms of his probation of an earlier embezzlement case and imposed a prison sentence. Kidnappers have released all 279 girls abducted from a boarding school in the northwest Nigerian state of Zamfara. Talking to the media, State Governor Bello Matawalle said the students are safe. More in this report.
Kidnappings for ransom are highly common across many northern Nigerian states. Last week, just when the government was trying to negotiate the release of 42 students and teachers in Niger state, gunmen kidnapped schoolgirls from Zamfara. On Monday, officials said they were in talks with the kidnappers. Governor Bello Matawalle said repentant bandits served as interlocutors between the kidnappers and the government. Matawalle said he initiated a peace accord, which yielded a positive result, while no ransom was paid for the release. He also mentioned the previous number of abducted girls reported by the police was incorrect.
They are here, when there are about 32 of them, they go and engage those bandits, and today you see all of them. And despite the fact that other media has said is 317, it is not correct. It is 279 children, and all of them are here. They are healthy, and we are going to take them to some medical facilities so that to examine their status of their health.
Most of the girls are unharmed, but at least a dozen were sent to a hospital for treatment. One of the victims said they were beaten up by the abductors. The girls were mostly barefoot and several had injuries to their feet.
Most of us got injured on our feet and we could not continue trekking, so they said they will shoot anybody who did not continue to walk. We walked across the river and they hit us and let us sleep under shrubs in a forest.
After 3 days of an agonizing wait, while fearing the worst, parents are relieved to have been reunited with their children.
ISIS-linked militants have attacked a UN base and overrun a humanitarian hub in northeastern Nigeria, trapping 25 aid workers. The military official said ISIS fighters invaded Dikwa town in West Borno state, dislodging troops from the military base. They said military reinforcements have been deployed to help repel the attack. Nigeria's military is battling the militant group Boko Haram that has killed 36,000 people and displaced more than 2 million in over a decade. In Somalia, 5 people have been executed by the militant group Al-Shabaab in the Middle Juba region. The group said the individuals were killed over spying for the US and Somali intelligence agencies. A local official said all those who had been killed were civilians. Middle Juba is the only region in the Horn of Africa country that Al-Shabaab fully controls. The group has been fighting against the Somali government and the African peacekeeping mission forces for over a decade. The International Atomic Energy Agency says North Korea's nuclear program is still a cause for serious concern. Addressing a news conference, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi termed the continuing signs of nuclear activity deeply regrettable. Grossi said Pyongyang is continuously violating the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. He said there is evidence that Pyongyang tested a cooling water facility at an experimental light water reactor last year. The IAEA inspectors are not allowed in North Korea, but they have been monitoring its activity via satellites. Earlier, a UN report warned that Pyongyang produced fissile material and upgraded its ballistic missile infrastructure. The World Health Organization has warned that the world will not be done with the COVID-19 pandemic by the end of this year. Meanwhile, the South African variant of the coronavirus has been detected in the Philippines. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.5 million lives and infected over 114 million people so far. More in this report.
Governments are advising the public not to let their guard down against the coronavirus as cases have started to increase again. In the U.S., the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director has warned that with variants spreading and a recent increase in infections, a fourth surge could occur before a majority is vaccinated. Mexico has started to ease the restrictions as cinemas and gyms are allowed to reopen in the capital. But it has kept strict social distancing measures in place along with reduced occupancy rate and continuous sanitization. The WHO has also sounded alarm bells, saying the number of new global infections spiked last week for the first time in 7 weeks.
In the past week, the number of reported cases of COVID-19 increased for the first time in 7 weeks. You remember that I reported the virus was on a decline for consecutive 6 weeks. But first time in 7 weeks, we have a COVID increase.
In Europe, Spain is considering a green corridor for vaccinated British tourists if there is no EU agreement on vaccination passports. Battling the world's worst surge in infections, The Czech Republic has deployed more forces to help enforce the new lockdown. In France, COVID-19-related ICU hospitalizations have risen to the highest since December 1st last year. But there is good news out of the UK, where data has shown 80% reduced risk of hospitalization for the elderly after a single dose of the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine.
These results may also help to explain why the number of COVID admissions to intensive care units among people over 80 in the UK have dropped to single figures in the last couple of weeks, which is something I know that we all welcome.
South Korea says it is drafting an extra budget of over $13 billion to support small businesses and safeguard jobs. Meanwhile, China says it aims to vaccinate 40% of its population by June.
Coronavirus has claimed 42 more lives in Pakistan overnight, taking the toll to nearly 13,000. The Health Ministry says 1,163 people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. The ministry said the nationwide case load has reached over 582,000. It said more than 547,000 people have recovered so far. The ministry added there are just over 22,000 active cases in the country. It said less than 2,000 patients are being treated in the hospitals for COVID-19. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Islamabad-Beijing relationship is an anchor for regional peace and stability. Qureshi made the remarks at a ceremony in Islamabad marking the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Qureshi said both the countries build their relationship around mutual trust and respect. He said Pakistan is looking forward to receiving China's President Xi Jinping in Islamabad later this year. Qureshi applauded the Chinese president's vision of Belt and Road Initiative. Meanwhile, in a message to the UN, Pakistan's envoy said Pak-China relations had stood the test of time. Munir Akram reaffirmed Pakistan's commitment to work with the Chinese for the promotion of regional and global peace. The US and Mexico have agreed to work together to combat COVID-19 and cooperate on the economic and climate change fronts. US President Joe Biden and his Mexican counterpart Andrés Manuel López Obrador discussed the issue at a virtual meeting. During the meeting, Obrador said it is important to maintain good relations with the United States. He said the two countries must coordinate to promote development with independence and autonomy. Obrador added respect for the sovereignty of both the countries was the key in an equal relationship.
Como lo acaba de expresar y me lo comentó.
That is why our relationship is strategic, and I'm also very grateful that you, as you just said and told me during the telephone conversation we had, you want there to be an equal footing in our relationships, for there to be respect for our sovereignty, and that is very important. We have to cooperate for development with independence, with autonomy.
Y eso es muy importante.
The U.S. state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after torrential rains inundated the streets. The emergency allows the government to mobilize state resources needed to support the affected cities and counties. The state's National Guard has also been activated and is responding to high water emergencies. Meanwhile, authorities urged residents to remain indoors. A flood warning was issued for the Kentucky River near Ravenna in Estill County until Thursday afternoon. Indonesia's Mount Sinabung volcano erupts again, sending a cloud of hot ash as high as 3 kilometers into the sky. Mount Sinabung's activity has increased since August last year. The alert for the volcano in North Sumatra province has been placed at the second highest level. Indonesia's volcanological survey tweeted that no casualties were reported. The officials had earlier urged people to stay at least 3 kilometers from the crater. Sinabung had been inactive for centuries before it erupted in 2010. In the UK, an artwork bearing the hallmarks of street artist Banksy has appeared overnight on the side wall of a former jail in Reading. The graffiti shows a prisoner escaping on a rope made of bed sheets tied to a typewriter. The prisoner depicted in the artwork is believed to be the famous poet and playwright Oscar Wilde. Wilde was imprisoned in the same jail between 1895 and 1897, having been convicted of gross indecency. The gorilla artist has not yet claimed the work. However, experts believe that it might be a new Banksy. There has been a campaign for several years to turn the former jail into an arts hub rather than being sold off for housing. A Nigerian artist is rescuing empty coconut shells from the trash and transforming them into artworks. More about his unique art in this report.
Nigerian artist Nathaniel Hodunu cuts coconut shells and shapes them into leaf-shaped designs for his latest project in Lagos. His studio is located in the city's Badagry coastal area, where many coconut plantations are rooted. Hodunu, a trained art teacher, began experimenting with coconut shells in 2006.
In the school where I was teaching, the parents forum chairman gave me 2 empty coconut seeds and said, okay, my final teacher, I know you can do something with this. So that was when I started thinking of what can I do with coconuts here, what type of stuff is this? And from there, I started making some things, craft works, then from the craft work to installations.
The 49-year-old later began sourcing coconut shells to make more art pieces at local coconut oil factories. His artwork includes portraits, sculptures, plus home and beauty accessories.
My recent artworks. Now, I started introducing colors to some of the works because of what some of my clients are saying that, oh, guy, put some colors to this thing. And I titled this one, Vision.
The artist sells his work for between $130 and $1,300 US, depending on the size and complexity of the piece. Hodunu now runs a quarterly training program for art lovers and enthusiasts to learn creative ways of using coconut shells.
Dolce & Gabbana mixed models with the robots in a disco-like atmosphere as the curtain came down on Milan Fashion Week.
Bright colors, leopard prints, and glittering gold and silver coats featured in the Dolce & Gabbana show, which was streamed on the brand's website and social media. The creative duo's 135 looks included jackets with big shoulders in a nod to the 1990s. They showcased faux fur and mini dresses resembling space outfits, but also see-through plastic overcoats similar to the protective gear worn by medics fighting the virus in hospitals. Models paired with 2 small robots created by the Italian Institute of Technology to celebrate the work of researchers in robotic technologies and artificial intelligence. The show ended the 6-day-long digital event.
More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Lows and the highs of the business world now. Wall Street's main indexes have opened little change after a strong start to March. Investors closely monitored the bond market as well as progress on the next round of fiscal stimulus. The Dow Jones Industrial Average Index traded marginally higher. The S&P 500 traded fractionally down, while Nasdaq Composite traded over 0.25% lower. Meanwhile, oil prices gave back early losses and turned positive despite expectations that top producers will agree to raise supplies. The Toyota Yaris has been named the Car of the Year 2021 at a ceremony in Geneva. The 4th-generation Yaris, a petrol-electric hybrid, beat 6 other cars to earn the prestigious title. The Yaris was selected by a jury of 559 automotive journalists from across Europe. The Executive Vice President of Toyota Europe, Matthew Harrison, said it is a great honor for the company. Runner-up was Fiat 500 Electric, with the Cupra Formentor crossover in 3rd. The award is an independent organization supported by 9 automotive publications from 9 European countries. And now the weather situation from across the globe. That's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.